Welcome to Life by Design for Chiropractors, episode 40.
Welcome to Life by Design, the podcast for chiropractors. Here's your host, Dr. Jamie Richards.
Welcome to Life by Design, the podcast for chiropractors. I'm your host, Dr. Jamie Richards. On today's episode, I bring onto the show a special guest, David Kolbe. David is the CEO of Kolbe Corp, and they created a tool, multiple tools, used to assess and measure how people take action. And this is something that can be used in your hiring process. It's something that can be used in your team development, something we use at Life by Design in our process, and it's been extremely helpful. So we thought we'd bring David onto the episode today and really share with you the behind the scenes, the details, and the information that this tool can give you. And it really is a very straightforward, simple tool that can be easily implemented that yields extremely valuable information. I know you're going to enjoy today's episode. I enjoyed today's episode of Life by Design for Chiropractors, the voice of reason in chiropractic. David Kolbe, welcome to Life by Design for Chiropractors.
Great to be with you, Jamie.
Yes, very good to have you here. Guys, this is a company that we use at Life by Design for Chiropractors. Highly, highly endorse the tools that Kolbe has and that they've developed. So we want to talk about those today and how you can use those in your practice. David, for those people who don't know, tell us a little bit about Kolbe. I asked you in the pre-show, last name Kolbe, you must have started it all, but there's a story behind this, and I believe it was your mother who got this started.
Yeah, so the business has been around for 41 years. My mom actually started it. I've been working in the business, I've been working in it for 41 years, kind of, but I was a little kid when it started. As an adult, I've been working here for 19 years and CEO for something like 9 or 10. I never remember exactly when I took over.
And now, what was the beginning stages? Was the Kolbe Index, is that how this all got started?
Well, the company actually started as an educational publishing business. So my mom looked around and realized there weren't enough really good materials for schools. They have lots of textbooks, but they didn't have lots of other material. So she began collecting the good stuff that was out there and then creating and publishing her own stuff. So that's where the company started, but kind of the longer history then of how we got into the Kolbe Index. And so for your listeners who don't know, the Kolbe A Index is something that helps people understand what's called the cognitive part of the mind. It's the instinctive part of who we are that drives the way we take action. So it's not about how smart you are, the cognitive learned things. It's not about what most people think of as your personality style, the affective part of you that's extroverted or introverted. But what we measure is the way you take action. And the longer history there is my grandfather, Eldon Wunderlich, designed something called the Wunderlich Personnel Test, which was really the first intelligence test that was short enough for businesses to use.
Right. That was your grandfather.
That was my grandfather. So my mom, although she started out in educational publishing, eventually moved over into the psychometric assessment and personnel testing business.
Well, don't they use the Wunderlich test at the NFL draft, right?
Yeah, they do. The NFL Combine uses it for all the guys that want to get drafted.
Cool story. So you've been in this, the point is your family has been in this for a long, long time.
Yep, a long time, if you go back to my grandfather.
And so when along this path, when did the Kolbe A Index get created? How old is this?
Well, I don't know exactly because it's one of those things that it didn't just pop out all of a sudden one day. So Kathy was a business person. She was also an educator. She ran a summer camp, but really an educational summer camp for kids. And both as a business owner and an educator, and with the family history of testing, she was looking at it and thinking, there's something more than just how smart somebody is or whether they're committed to a project that drives the way they take action and whether they're going to be successful in a particular way. So over time, she went from observing different people in different contexts and trying to figure out what's the common factor, what's going on, or what are the different factors that I can isolate and look at, to then eventually putting it down to a set of questions that she would kind of ask herself and answer through observation. And then eventually, about 35 years ago, she put it down on paper so that it was something that you could ask questions of an individual about themselves. So about 35 years ago is when it started to take its current form. But even then, it took a little while to do all of the validation and the testing to make sure she knew what she was measuring. It was, the instrument itself was reliable and valid. So she didn't even bring it out on the market for a while after she had developed it.
So maybe an odd question, but do you have any idea how many people or how many tests have actually been taken in the time frame that Kolbe's been around?
Oh, you love to torture me. So I am one of those initiating fact finder people, to use a little bit of our jargon. I'm very detail oriented. I want to know exactly how many, but our records from the early days aren't great. It's over a million, but I don't know if it's 1.1 or 1.2. I don't know exactly. In that ballpark, though.
Great. So plenty of tests have been taken. This the Kolbe A index has been validated, and so where would we're going to talk about it today as it applies to a chiropractic business. What are some of the, I guess it's probably the full range, but what are some of the businesses that you've seen start to implement this with success? Is it pretty much across the board?
It is pretty much across the board. I mean, we've had lots of healthcare businesses, chiropractors, dentists, doctors, hospitals, nurses, but we really go after everybody because our business is mission driven. We have a mission to help people understand their strengths, their instinctive strengths, and then learn how to use those strengths to improve the things they care about. So our mission is broad. We haven't just done this as a way to make money and, hey, let's just focus on the one industry that's going to make us the most money. We want to reach as many people as we can. So we have lots of people in financial services and manufacturing. We literally have everything from Fortune 100 companies down to, individual people or, very small businesses.
So I think maybe one of the things you get when you talk about the Kolbe Index or people find you, do you get a lot of people thinking that, oh, well, this is just another personality test? And how do you differentiate? Because I like what you're saying in terms of the action. Do you have a challenge with that? And people see it and they go, oh, well, I've already taken a personality test.
Yeah, we do get that from time to time. And my response to it is, look, there are some great personality tests out there that tell you very interesting and valuable things. So one of the oldest ones is the Myers-Brigg test that your listeners may know. But the key thing is those instruments measure something different. An analogy I'll use is if you think about the weather, I can tell you how hot it is outside, but that doesn't tell you what the humidity is, and vice versa. So, you wouldn't, if you really want to know how hot it is and somebody tells you, well, it's 90% humidity. Okay, well, they really haven't told you anything. That's useful information, but it's not what you were looking for. So those personality tests talk to you about your desires, your preferences. So, it'll tell you things like, would you rather be around lots of people or would you rather be by yourself? Are you motivated more by, say, money, or are you motivated more by prestige? And we don't talk about those things. So, my feeling on it is I think they're both great to take. I don't see them as competition at all. I see them as, hey, you learn more about yourself. And then it's being smart about how to use them to accomplish the things you want to accomplish. So if somebody tells you, oh, you're an extrovert, okay, well, that's really important to know in some situations, and it's much less helpful in others. So they complement each other.
Right. I think that's a great way to put it, is they create a picture that you can use. And we're going to dive into the Kolbe index here and talk to me a bit about, what is this? And you keep, it's measuring instinctive strengths and it's telling us how to take action. But let's go another layer beyond that. What is it that we're asking? What information are we getting, and how do we use this information?
Yeah. So in terms of what we're asking, the instrument itself really just asks 36 questions, and it's really easy to take. Most people take 15 to 20 minutes to finish it. And then the information that you get is it tells you about these things that don't change. They are instinctive. We've done test, retest reliability studies over 15 years, and it's very stable. So it tells you the way you will take action, and we've broken that down into 4 what we call action modes. So 4 different areas. So the first one, and by the way, everybody falls somewhere in each of these 4.
Right.
It's not like you have one and not the other. Everybody's
Right.
got something in all 4 of them. Fact finder is how we gather and share information. So, it kind of runs the spectrum from somebody who needs information in detail and facts and figures. And then on the other end, it's somebody who really simplifies, distills information, only gets key points rather than really having to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And by the way, neither of these are better or worse. They're just different.
Right.
So I happen to be the kind of person that needs more information and becomes an expert and does all kinds of research. My mom, who started the business, is at the other end of the spectrum. That is really good most of the time because we complement each other. If there's research to be done, I'm the right person to do it. If there's just bottom line simplifying, she's the one to do it. It can be an issue if we don't know how to bridge those differences.
Right. So here's a question: is there research into how these instinctive strengths get developed? You talk about here they are, they don't change, but have you guys looked back and kind of gone through how do you get to this point, and is there a point at which you can change them or develop them, or again, are they just instinctive and there you go?
Well, what we've seen is with the research that we've done in terms of retest reliability, looking from an early age to later ages, they don't seem to change. So when you use that word develop, that, we're going to have to dive a little deeper into that, because what I would say is you can develop your ability to use them well, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're changing.
Gotcha.
I'll get back to the other 3 of the action modes in a second, but the fact finder, for instance, if you go to school, so I went to law school, I'm a lawyer by training, it didn't make me more of a fact finder, but it helped me apply that fact finder need for information and detail in the legal context. So I became better. I changed my cognitive piece, my smarts, because I learned about the law and how to do legal research and things like that. But it didn't make me the kind of person that innately or instinctively does research.
Gotcha.
I brought my fact finder to that. So no, we don't see that it changes, but you can develop your use of it over time.
Okay. What's the youngest, you say you've done these tests, retests, what would be the youngest that you would be able to identify? I guess you'd have to figure out at what age somebody could comprehend the questions.
Right, so we actually have different versions. The A index is really meant for adults, so it's usually somebody from about 17, 18. Preferably they have some work experience, so they have a broader context than just school, partly because of the way the questions are worded and the experiences that we're trying to get at. But then we also have the Y index, which is for youth, and that's about a 5th grade reading level, or about like a 12-year-old, or sorry, a little younger than that, 10-year-old. And again, it depends more on the reading level than it does the exact age.
Right. Great. So let's go through the other 3. What are the other 3 areas of action taking?
Right. So the next one is what we call follow through, and it's the way we deal with systems and structure, how you organize things. So on one end of the spectrum is somebody who's very open-ended and adaptable. They create and take shortcuts. The other end of the spectrum is somebody who really initiates systems and structure. They create organization. They not only come up with the 12-point plan, they actually follow the 12-point plan. Right. So I happen to be one on the first of that spectrum, the first description. I'm very adaptable. You give me a 12-point plan, oh, that looks great, and I'll get to about point 4, and then I kind of jump over to point 7, and then I finish up at point 12, and I hope I get it done. So again, not better or worse. I would tell you that if I were hiring somebody to run, safety at my nuclear power plant, I'm going to want somebody who's more systems oriented. Right. But if I want somebody who's going to, maybe get quicker results, it's less about repeating them and being super consistent, then hey, somebody on the other end of the spectrum might be the right person for that job. The next one is quick start. It's how we deal with risk and uncertainty. So what we would call an initiating quick start is somebody who really needs to have different things. They create uncertainty. They take risks. If they've done the same thing 6 times, they're probably going to do it a different way the 7th time just because that's who they are. The other end of the spectrum then is somebody who stabilizes. They prevent chaos from happening. They create standards that they stick with. And then the final one is what we call implementer. If I could go back in time and change the name, I would, because I think it's a little confusing. The name comes from how we use tools and implements. It's all about how we handle space and tangibles. So the confusing part is it's not implementer as in how we carry things out, but it's how we literally use our hands. So on one end of the spectrum, that initiating implementer builds, they construct, they're very tangible and tactile. You ask that person a question, they would be most comfortable answering it with a prop, something they could show you and demonstrate. The other end of that spectrum is somebody who, would present with words, perhaps, or visualizations on a screen rather than in person. They imagine rather than build.
So, as you're going through this, I'm of course listening to you, David, but I'm already thinking, of all these different examples, and I'm thinking in my own practice, my own businesses, how you can use these and implement these. And, even having done this already, there's already all kinds of things popping in my brain. So let's go through some of these things. I'm a business owner, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a CEO. We do this for myself. Maybe we do this for all of our team. What do we do with that information?
Well, I always like to say, especially with people I think who are going to dominate your audience, with entrepreneurs and small business owners, look, it begins with you. This is not an ego thing. This is reality. If you're not successful, your business is not successful. So the first thing I would say to your audience is take the Kolbe Index, read it, and celebrate it. Some of the most powerful discussions that we've had with people are the ones who tell us, wow, when I read my Kolbe results, it was liberating. We had one business owner recently say it was the most powerful thing that he'd ever received, bit of information he'd ever gotten for his business, because it gave him permission to do what he did really well, to be successful in his way. So That's where it starts. The next thing, in a very kind of general way, but is to say, okay, now that you've focused on you and you've built your business around your strengths so that you can maximize those, what are the gaps? So, we live in the real world, not some Pollyanna place where, I'll use myself as an example. I mentioned my strength in follow-through being very adaptable and open-ended is also a weakness, that I don't bring everything to conclusion. I leave loose ends around. So me running a small business, look, payroll's got to be met. Bills have to get paid. Records have to be kept. If it's a 2-person office and I'm trying to do all that stuff myself, that's a problem. So I've got to say, hey, maybe the other person in the office should do that. And if the other person is too busy, this is a gap that needs to be filled in. So find people who complement you. And I think this is a mistake that a lot of entrepreneurs make. They find people who are just like them. Mm-hmm. Well, that's great when you're sitting around and brainstorming ideas, or if you're more the planner and systematizer, you're both coming up with systems and structures, but who's doing the stuff that neither of you naturally do? So find somebody who complements you. Design that job very specifically so that you're not then stuck doing all of the stuff that is a poor fit. You don't want to design that world. You will burn out. It's going to be harder to A, be successful, and B, sustain that success once you get there.
So it sounds a lot like you're describing chiropractors. I'm sure it's other business owners as well, but I know that the doctors who are listening to the show today, they get this. They're completely in tune with what you're saying, because we do have to do everything from managing our own marketing to delivering patient care to, keeping up with files, administrative tasks, and all the other parts. So I definitely think it's a challenge. Now, I know that you obviously probably work with offices, work with the people taking the index. Have you seen any, other than just to say, hey, do the things that you're good at, is there any tips or strategies? So let's say I get the index and I'm doing all kinds of things that maybe aren't my special talent, and maybe yet I don't have the resources to go hire other things other than suck it up and do it. Is there any pieces of advice you can give small business owners?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you're saying, and I think this is partly the kind of the life cycle of the business. There is that phase where you don't yet have the resources to outsource stuff or hire another person. So yeah, you have to suck it up. So what are some suggestions? Identify the tasks that are not particularly well suited to your instinctive strengths, and set aside time to do those things, and be very deliberate about this. Acknowledge for yourself that this is the time that you're doing stuff that isn't a good fit. So to make it more bearable, number one, just realizing this is the stuff I don't want to do and I'm making myself do it. Give yourself a reward afterward, whatever that is for you. It might be, I'm going to take 20 minutes off and go for a walk because I like to get out. It might be, I want to go get the coffee. I want to get, whatever that reward. And because you're going to need to do this maybe every day, I'm not talking about a vacation to Hawaii. It's a more immediate and smaller thing. So that's one thing. I'd also say do it earlier in the day when you still have energy. If you put it off till the end of the day, you and I know what's going to happen. You're going to put it off till tomorrow, which means, well, maybe the day after that. So yeah, do it earlier in the day, but also set aside a block of time where even if you haven't finished all of it, it's done, so that, you may have to go back, but you give yourself a break, because this is stuff that's going to be harder for you to do. It'll actually take more energy to complete than maybe harder tasks that are a better fit for your instinctive strengths.
Right. Perfect. So now let's say we've transitioned. Now we have the resources. We're ready to bring somebody on. Let's talk about the hiring process and the use of the Kolbe index in hiring. Do you suggest that people, have potential staff or potential team members take the index even prior to being hired?
Yeah, but I would say the first step in that process is understanding the job that you're filling. So whether it's a brand new one or an existing one that you're refilling, you don't have to spend hours on this, but at least take a little time to understand what's this role, what are the tasks involved, and we actually have a process to help with that. You take what we call a Kolbe C index that looks at the job that you're considering, and then that gets put into a process using software that we've developed called Kolbe Right Fit software that develops a conative job profile. So you get that picture. Usually it's with the boss doing the C index and also taking into account the boss's own instinctive strengths. Sometimes if you have, like in a chiropractic office, let's say you have, if it's a larger practice, you've got 10 chiropractors working for you, and you've got, 4 of them that are really successful, or maybe 3 of them are clearly the cream of the crop. Maybe you want to replicate those 3, so you might get information about what do they look like. Maybe I just want to repeat that. But the key thing is you build that job profile with the Right Fit software, and then you have applicants take their Kolbe A, and the process just kind of gives you a thumbs up, thumbs down. It doesn't mean hire them or not. It means, hey, from a conative perspective, they look like a good fit. You still need to know, have they learned what they need to learn? Are they going to be committed? All those things. I would never say just use Kolbe. There's a lot more that goes into a hiring decision, of course.
Right. And, people listening to the show have heard us talk about this before, but at Life by Design for Chiropractors, we have our own hiring process, and you'll be happy to know that built into that is the use of the Kolbe index. So, there is other components, and we agree that they need to be done, as an entire system. And this is, as you said earlier, with the, the psychometric testing or the personality testing, it complements, and it gives you, an overall picture and allows you to make a better, more objectively based decision.
Yeah, absolutely.
So here's I think a great question. I know we're we could just keep going here. So we're getting closer and closer to the end. So I really want to get to this one. Obviously, listening to you talk, and most docs are listening, I'm sure they're already starting to brainstorm things they can do. But I don't know that a lot of people quite grasp the real benefit of just focusing on your special talents. Like I think intuitively you get it. Sure, if I do the things I'm good at, I'm going to be better. But over the course of your time in the company and being the CEO and working with millions of clients, what are those pieces where you look at and you go, listen, here's the real deep benefit that maybe you don't quite realize yet that I can tell you about?
Unfortunately, I think sometimes we learn those hard lessons. We learn those lessons through hard examples. And
right.
To me, the one that sticks out, because I've seen it over and over again, are people who hear the voice of their parents in their heads very distinctly, and they were brought up a particular way. And I think number one, most people, parents or otherwise, don't even know this cognitive part of the mind exists. And what most of us do when we're raising our kids, is we take what worked well for us, we learn those lessons, and we try to impart those to our kids. And we see over and over again where parents have said, this is the right way to do things because it's what worked for them.
Right.
So, with my initiating fact finder preventive follow through, I might tell my kids, look, it's all about getting all the information, learning all this stuff, becoming an expert. You need to really dive deep and know all this stuff, and don't worry about being consistent and having a pattern of getting up at the same time every day and going through a routine. Routines are never going to make you successful. Okay, that's true for me, but that's not true. Actually, not surprisingly, I know all of my kids' Kolbe results. I have 4 of them. That wouldn't be great advice for any of my kids. There's one of them that's pretty close to, but I'm different than all 4 of them. So again, that hard lesson is, we've heard so many of our clients say, it was painful for me because I worked really hard to do things the way I was taught, again, by my parents over and over again. And it was hard for me. Even if I achieved success, it seemed too hard. It didn't seem genuine. It almost seemed like it lacked integrity to them because they kind of knew it wasn't right. And when they learned their Kolbe results, they learned, it's not that I'm saying to my mom or dad that they're wrong. I'm saying there's a different way for me.
Right.
And that's, I think, that most important thing is the freedom to then be yourself. You learn this and you say, wow. It's not rejecting somebody else's way. It's about understanding this is what drives my success, and giving up those other parts and not being weighed down or constricted by them.
So do you think that, and have you with your clients, do you think that this is a tool that would be helpful in, say, relationships, and not just working business relationships, but say, partnerships, marriages, and things like that?
Yeah, so there are 2 things to say about that. Yes, absolutely. Just knowing each other's Kolbe results, you can look at them and see where you guys are different, where you're the same. I was going and speaking to a marriage group. It was people who were kind of in the profession. It was mostly marriage counselors. And I remember I hadn't actually been working at Kolbe Corp for a long time, and I hadn't actually been married for all that long. So I was a little nervous about this speech, and I asked my wife, what do you think? How has understanding this helped? And she thought about it a second, and she said, well, I don't want to kill you. And I was very pleased that my wife did not want to kill me. But I had to ask, well, okay, you got to give me a little more. What do you mean you don't want to kill me? She said, well, if I didn't understand and in this case it was my follow through, that, I don't follow systems and structures and routines. And my wife is at the other end of that spectrum. We're very different. So she said, if I didn't understand that about you, I would think that you just didn't care enough about me or about what was important to me to do it the way I would do it. But because she knew that about me, look, there's still frustrations. Again, this is the real world. And when I mess up her systems, she can get annoyed. But the coping mechanism is a lot faster. Rather than having that annoyance turn into anger and resentment, she can turn it around and I can remind her. And I can also say to myself, look, I really care about this relationship. So although following the system is not natural for me, I'm going to pick my battles, and I am going to make a point of following the most important ones. But then I can also negotiate with her and say, honey, I know all 10 of those things are important to you. Let's be realistic. I'm going to follow 2 or 3. Pick your 2 or 3, and I'll do them. I promise.
I'm having a good chuckle over here, David, just because I'm thinking about my own, obviously, personal relationship and my wife, and we sound like there's some similarities here, and she'll have a good laugh when she listens to this podcast. And you know what? The first thing I think we're going to do tonight is I'm going to log on and make sure she does her Kolbe so she can see what hers is, so I know how I'm supposed to answer her questions and take care of the things that she needs. So I think this might just really be a good bonus for me too. So guys, what I want you to do is I want you to head over to Kolbe.com, and what you can do, the action step you can take is you can actually take the Kolbe index, and that's the starting point that David wants you to do. It's the easiest kind of entry way there. There's so much when you go there, so you can get distracted, and it's all good information, but just start at the Kolbe A index, and that will get you started. David, last words, what would you say to the chiropractors, business owners, and entrepreneurs who are listening to today's show?
Number one, thanks for listening. I hope you've gotten a lot out of it, and thank you to you for having me on, Jamie. And for them, look, when you figure out what your instinctive strengths, have the courage to use them. And then the second thing, I know you said 1, but I'm going to broaden it into 2.
Sure.
Look, your listeners are in a position of leadership, so help other people develop their own strengths and give the people that you are around and that you are leading the freedom to develop their own way of doing things, not just mimic you.
Wonderful. Thank you, David, and thank you for listening to the show Life by Design for Chiropractors, the voice of reason in chiropractic.